How long have you been at M&C Saatchi? Have you been there a while?
I have. I've been at M&C 7 years, coming up on eight. So yeah, one of the OGs. I feel like in ad agency land, that's a long time.
I was gonna say that's like 50 years in any other agency or any other sector.
What's kept
Um,
you there? Just out of curiosity, what are a couple few words that come to mind that's kept you at so long in one place?
It's evolved so much at M&C Saatchi since I started here. So I think having like fresh challenges each year is really invigorating. But when I started 7 years ago, it was M&C Saatchi Mobile, and then we rebranded to M&C Saatchi Performance. And I think along the way, I've just been able to work on really interesting brands like entertainment, streaming, music, and this combination of like the ad industry changing all the time, and then these brands also experimenting with their business model. And to me, like each year, there's still something new that I'm learning. So it's sort of like helped me stay and build my skill set.
that's awesome.
I'm gonna
It's
fade into the background on this, Sandra, and let you all continue on. I love to follow the journey.
no, it's I think that's a valid question. I think it's been like Ryan, you probably wouldn't know this because you've never, I don't think you've ever worked agencies, but like it's always been like a thing that people are like, oh, you want more money? Like you need to jump, like you want this, you need to jump. And that's always been like what I've heard. So when agencies can figure out how to get people to stay long term, I think it speaks to the like how well they treat their employees, which is definitely a good thing. And I can't say that all major holding companies can say that either.
Never been
And we can leave it at that.
And I've never been on agency, so I come from influencer marketing space, a lot of kind of similarities as I kind of hear your experience. So yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to take up all of your time. So let's definitely dive into CTV and your thoughts on CTV. So you've been at M&C Saatchi between almost 8 years. So in the time that you've been there, how have you seen like that brands utilizing CTV change over that time? Have you seen large shifts? Have you seen like more adoption, less adoption? Like how did in your time there?
Yes. So the context, it's definitely changed, like the level of CTV conversations and getting more clients on board with testing really evolved in the last 3 to 4 years. And M&C Saatchi, when I started, was M&C Saatchi Mobile, and then we evolved and expanded to M&C Saatchi Performance. But there's still a lot of clients that we work with are focused on something down funnel that could be ROAS, installs, sales, really different per client, but there's a lot of accountability and pressure to drive results. So kind of what I've observed was that in the past, maybe advertisers knew about CTV or clients were aware of it, but they had just kind of parked it to the side as, this is something that big CPG brands or, a company with a large budget might invest in CTV for branding. And their mindset was really focused on acquisition channels. It could be search or display. So over time, what's really changed is more of the performance brands we work with, gaming apps, streaming, ecommerce, they're reaching out and more interested in testing CTV. And we're able to educate clients of, this really shouldn't be pigeonholed as just branding. You can use it for full funnel strategies. And we would kind of change the way we target users or what the algorithm is optimizing towards. And then that helps us fit CTV kind of custom to your needs and to your KPIs.
That's great. I feel like you've kind of answered this, but one of the main questions that we had was like why CTV is important to you. I would say you kind of just answered it. Like it's good to have a media mix and be like where the people are, but anything else you would like to add there as to why it's important or why you'd want brands to consider it?
Sure. I mean, I think of it through the lens of my own personal life and just like consumers out there. It's hard to ignore CTV at this point because it's pretty integrated as a behavior, right? Like most of us are streaming some sort of content And a lot of people across different age generations look to streaming for sports or entertainment, just like a way to kind of take a break outside of like whatever craziness is going on in your life. So because it's like enables you to tap into a large audience, and most people, like, there's all these headlines from Adweek about this continued cord cutting trend. So to me, it's like very obvious that it matters, but it still begs the question of how do you make the strategy fit for your particular industry, or maybe you have price sensitive like CPA goals and things like that. So that's been sort of when clients come and they're a little hesitant, I think that's why, is they're just trying to understand, like, what can I actually track? How do I drive success here?
Got it. When you're having those conversations with your clients around those sensitive areas, like industry specific or CPA goals, like what's most important to convey to them as far as CTV goes, or how do you approach those conversations?
Usually I approach it, I think there's some positives lately in the CTV space and the different relationships that we've built, whether it's with TV Scientific or other vendors. I found that there's more data and technology that has now made CTV easier to test for people who are realistically like, hey, I'm used to running on Apple search and display campaigns where it's clickable and you could drive someone right to the App Store. So I think once you sort of explain the CTV environment, that you can have attribution in place and look at, maybe use IP addresses and certain data points to actually tell a story of, after someone was exposed to the CTV ad, did they visit the website, or did they go check out, and how much did they purchase? Once people kind of get more comfortable with what is possible in the environment and measurement space, I think it opens the conversation more. And then also kind of just the reducing the barrier to entry is important. So we try and always look for vendors where it's not a massive test budget, and we can sort of like get the knowledge and learnings before we ramp things up. I never was on the like linear traditional TV buying side. I always came from, my first job out of college was in digital, but I think that's a really exciting kind of emergence where, because there's new technology with CTV, you can get creative with the messaging, but also apply some of these items from your digital marketing toolkit, like now apply to optimizing CTV, which is exciting.
That makes sense. And that's very true. I feel like the flexibility of having like small test budgets to prove that it would work would probably ease a lot of the concerns for your clients and for your team too, because you're the ones who ultimately are making these recommendations, so you want it to work as well. And you need
exactly.
to work.
Yeah, I can understand how, if you had come from this perception of like, well, TV buying in the past, like you commit up front and then you get a wrap up, that doesn't always translate well to performance teams that are interested in CTV because it's a high addressable audience, but they're like, we actually need more check-ins, and we need to be able to assess the conversion data and change things. It could be like change the targeting, experiment with the creative. So that's always like a criteria when I'm looking for setting up my first CTV test, or if you have 4 or 5 different vendors, I'm checking with like, what can we see in real time? Like, how do you approach optimizations? So I think flexibility is important.
That makes sense. You mentioned when you're thinking about like the evolving landscape, you think about yourself and your own viewing habits. So I wanted to ask you, what are you like, how are you streaming TV right now? What is your favorite way to watch TV if you don't have a cable box in your living room?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Are you watching Hulu? Do you watch YouTube TV? Like, how are you watching TV? Or do you not really watch TV? And that's also an okay answer.
Yes. No, I'm definitely watching content. It's almost one of those things where you have to stay in the loop. Like everybody's got a favorite show. I'm at the office today and people are like chatting up about Love is Blind. And so I'm not particularly loyal to one app, which I think also reflects the market. A lot of people, like I use Amazon Prime, Netflix. I just took out like a free trial on Paramount Plus to get a specific show. But I would say I'm usually looking for something like TV shows to binge watch on the weekends, particularly if it's like a rainy weekend in New York. Gosh, the latest show that I've been into, there's a few.
Yeah, I want to hear your favorite shows too.
Well, my good friend actually posts like their top 10, and I trust their taste. So, lately there's one called Bosch that was really good, like action. Another one that was really fun is I think it was Love is Blind. We had a friend who was actually on the show, and so I'm not usually into reality TV, and I think the premise of the show is really ridiculous, but end up sitting like in one session you could watch like 4 or 5 episodes and be like, wow, totally gotten sucked into these people's lives.
I agree. That show really does suck you into certain people's lives, and then you start following them, and it's actually so interesting. Like the last season, I forget the girls' names, but they started like a podcast because they ended up being like best friends, and they talked about how it's changed their life because they've quit their jobs and now they focus on like social media, which is so yeah, I completely agree. I'm like invested in some of these people's like their like new career and how I think one of them used to be like a financial advisor and now she's like a social media influencer because of Love is Blind.
Yeah, the show like catapults their influencer, like their following, and then it opens doors, I suppose.
It's so interesting. And I agree. I feel like it's probably our generation in general is not streaming service agnostic. Like we spread it out pretty far. Like I know personally we've got YouTube TV and Hulu and Disney and HBO and Peacock, and we probably have more and I just don't know it. We have literally everything under the sun because we don't know what we want to watch, and we watch like certain shows. We'll cancel one and then resubscribe to another one. Like we canceled Showtime after like a show aired, and then I don't know if we have Showtime anymore, but I completely agree with you. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
My husband, we like watch a show and then cancel it and then move on to the next and just circle through. And now that we're kids, we're like looking for educational children's shows. So that's a whole other.
Nice. You're like added to the list of subscriptions. I recently read, I think Tubi releases sort of like a trends report. And one of the stats that jumped out was that on average, people spend more than $100 a month on streaming services and more than they pay for gas. And at first I was like, wow, that when you add it together, that's alarming. But I think I would fall into that group. It'll be interesting to see in different economic times, like people are cutting and trying to, see where they can save money. One of our clients is a AVOD service, and it, just working on the monetization of users. And so we think that's going to be really big, is that people still want that entertainment, but they're willing to opt into AVOD apps and willing to sit through commercials as long as they can get really good movies and content. So it should amplify that.
It's true. Like Hulu and Peacock, I think we have commercials, but we really like the app, so we just keep it. It's true. It makes sense. And I like that you mentioned that trends report. It's so interesting. I mean, to be fair, YouTube TV alone is like $75 or $80 a month. So like some of them are a little bit more pricey, but you pay for it because of the ease of use, etc. And also like on that note, the success team and my team in particular, like one of the things we tend to do when we launch new campaigns is like casting a wide net, because we don't know what shows people are watching and where we're going to find that audience, and then refining from there. And it is always changing. Like we have to be like, if we have a long-standing partner, we could have ran Hulu, for instance, last year, and it could have not worked. But if Hulu has a new show out, or Hulu has something that's like relevant to that audience now, we'll find that it's working now. So it's like we have to be like my team in particular has to be constantly optimizing and trying to find to performant inventory, just because of that key point that people are not loyal, and they're constantly changing services depending on what they're watching. It's interesting.
It is. I think from crafting like a media plan from the client's view, like there's been questions that pop up around like, why not just invest in Roku, or like the different nuances between going direct versus programmatic. And what I found, like one of the advantage of the programmatic side is kind of what you're talking about with casting a wide net, is putting in this criteria, like we're trying to reach X audience or a behavior of a person who might be jumping across different shows and apps. So the element of programmatic is finding that right user no matter what environment or app they're on, versus going to like a walled garden like Roku, which can still be impactful, but then you're kind of like, okay, we're tackling this audience particularly.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about like using like Roku Direct or YouTube Direct. Like obviously it works really well on whatever the strategy is for your client, what they want to achieve, which makes sense. So you mentioned the 2B trends report. How else do you stay on top of like the evolving landscape, whether it's CTV or everything? Like, are you reading the trades? How are you doing that? And what are you reading?
Sure. I think it's a combination of reading these interesting reports that are coming out from Roku, Tubi, even the TV scientific blog. I'm like, okay, just snooping around for like good articles or videos to help me stay on top of any new betas coming out. Or there's also been a lot of M&A in the industry. So Walmart and Vizio partnership. So I think it's a combination of reading the trades, and then also, I really enjoy connecting with other advertisers, marketers. The M&C Saatchi team just went to MAU, and before that, like MAU session, we had a huddle and we talked about trends in the industry. So I got to learn a lot about CTV from other M&C Saatchi peers who have run it and tested it for different clients. So really, I think that's a way to stay on top of like fast moving trends. There's always a new vendor or something cool coming out, like shoppable CTV ads or interactive ads, things that maybe are ahead of the curve and is not the bulk of what we're buying, but creates ideas and brainstorms ways to help solve like brand needs.
That makes sense. Did you get to go? You went to MAU?
I passed on it. I'm pregnant, and I was like, I do not want to go to Vegas, but
it's like it's so. It's like I actually felt the same way, because I was pregnant when my company went to MAU. Not right now, but like in the past. And I'm like, I really want to go because I don't want to miss out, but I also really don't want to walk through clouds of cigarette smoke. So it's like
Vegas is fun, but it's its own crazy beast. But we have like 4 or 5 folks who go every year, and what I thought was cool was just with the team doing these little like prep kind of fireside chat things, so that whether it's a salesperson or a head of a different department was going to MAU, they had spoken about, for me, I was talking about CTV, others were talking about attribution and data analytics. So I think talking to people and like actually sharing your stories and like almost a live case study of like, well, I tested it for this vendor and this is how it worked out, helps a lot, like accelerate your learnings.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Oh, so exciting.
Big life change for sure.
Big life change. But one of the best life changes. It makes your life more full. Like, not that you don't have a full life, but it just like enhances your life. Also, other than the sleep, it enhances your life.
Yeah. No, I mean, I
Yeah,
think
you get
I'm
used to
excited to expand my like experience and emotions and the
Yeah.
family literally expanding, but it's gonna be a wild ride, I think.
Is this your first child? Is this your first, Bridget?
It is, yes.
Oh yeah, you're gonna. I'm a father of 3, and
Okay.
I mean truly, Sandra, you're spot on. Like everything is amazing except
It's all amazing
the
except
sleep period. That
sleep.
I'm sure you've heard of.
Just the sleep.
Right. Yeah. All the health and wellness advice that people give you over the years, you're like, okay, sleep is crucial, but we're just going to push past that and try and operate the best we can with the lack of sleep.
You. It's the weirdest thing because I love to sleep. Like we got these two of my coworkers, we all have these Oura rings, and I'll show them like my sleep, like the weekends and stuff, because I'll sleep when my kids sleep. And they're like, wow, you really like to sleep. And I'm like, yes, I love sleep. I need a good night's sleep where I don't operate. And I got used to not sleeping. So I feel like if the nap queen can get used to not sleeping, like other people can do it too.
Love that. Love it. You're like, if I can do it, anyone can.
If I can get this done.
Yeah. In the spirit of time, I wanted to ask, this is actually pretty unique because I feel like it's interesting listening to both perspectives, TV Scientific and agency. Do you have any question? I'd be curious if you have a question. I know we're short of time, but is there a question you'd like to ask Sandra that's maybe more TV Scientific focused or CTV questioning?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, out of curiosity, I think for M&C Saatchi, there's some clients that have a larger aptitude for testing, whereas others are a bit set in their way and really, I think maybe looking at cost per CPMs as high on CTV. So like when you address like challenges for the performance side and like what trends are you seeing that help get more of that budget for testing? That's one question. And I'll pause there.
Yeah.
What trends, like as far as, sorry, I don't fully understand. What trends are we seeing as far as testing goes?
My question is more around like if you are working with performance brands and there's apprehensions on like the cost of CTV, or they just aren't fully sold on the fact that it works as well as like traditional digital channels. Like how do you pitch that to these performance marketers?
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's a couple of things there. The nice thing about our platform is that we have all of the order IDs, and we also have the full user path from first impression to last impression. We can see if they visit the website, if they're looking at products, and when they officially check out. So we have every single user's journey that we can report back on to see how CTV is impacting the user journey. And then on top of that, we have additional tools that we use to measure things. Like we can report on website lift as well. So like how is the TV commercial running via TV Scientific lifting your website traffic? And we can report on that constantly. So that's also a nice tool. If they're not happy with like the prices of CTV inventory, which is definitely a valid concern, that some of these CPMs are very high. Like the thing about the CPMs is we're ideally backing into some type of cost per purchase goal or like CPI goal. And so my goal is always to find the pockets of performant inventory. So if we see that like we can get performance from a $20 CPM and we're hitting the cost per purchase goals or the CPI goals, then great. We're going to focus on that inventory. I have no reason to want to buy the more expensive inventory if it's not working. So we resources on the success team, because if we're only buying like Max and Discovery and Hulu and Peacock's most expensive inventory, then we're definitely not going to hit the goals. So like we do like to have a mix. And I think that those are all valid concerns, and it's just really about showing whether or not we can hit the goals. And then to be honest with you, like if I see that we're not hitting goal and that we're so far from goal and we're getting farther away every day, we're not going to keep spending. we're going to have a conversation with you about whether or not it makes sense to stop running the campaign. Like we want to be partners and we want to create like long-standing relationships. And if it's not working for one specific initiative, I'd rather have an open and honest conversation about that than be like, oh, well, I need to get another $1,000 out of this. Like that does not matter to me personally. And it doesn't matter to the company and like what we stand for. And honestly, there's apprehension with everything. Like CTV and TV as a performance channel is somewhat new. So I think it's very fair to not be fully sold on something that you've never ran before.
Yeah, that builds a lot of trust. I think when we're willing and able to say like, look, we're not going to throttle the budget. Like we're going to test into this. And then based on your results, ramp up where it makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. The other thing I was going to ask is kind of about like what type of clients you're working most with, or are you seeing success for like a particular business model or industry, or is it truly diverse? Because I like try if CTV makes sense strategically, right? Like we like pull audience insights all the time, and we can be like, for a new business pitch, you know, a gaming app just came up, e-commerce brand selling jewelry. And we're like, okay, you have your audience who's purchasing your products also tends to be spending over-indexing time on XYZ streaming platforms. So it is, you know, a clear fit. But I'm curious, since you guys have the actual conversion data and that experience across different verticals, would you say it's better for one versus the other?
There are some things that it's not a fit for, like a lot of HIPAA compliant brands, like it is not a fit for if we cannot pixel your website. And it's not that we can't run an awareness campaign, like we definitely can run awareness campaigns. It's just not our bread and butter. You know what I mean? So if you can aggregate your awareness campaigns on another platform, then I would highly encourage you to do that. So things like that are really not a fit. We've found a really sweet spot with gaming clients. Gaming clients work so well on our platform. We also have a ton of e-commerce clients as well. So like particularly things like Brilliant Earth, Charles & Colvard, Crocs. There's like dog food companies, more like women's clothing. There's lots of different e-commerce clients. We also have a lot of like leisure clients as well, like leisure entertainment. I'm trying to think, like technology too. It's really like, it really runs the gamut. And it's not that CTV isn't a fit. It's more just like, we need to see what your goals are, and then we could tell you like if it's a fit or not. Because if your goal, like let's say for instance, a gaming client has a goal that's like a 30-cent install, we're probably not going to work because we're not a rewarded platform. If this is TV, we're not going to be able to hit a 30-cent install. Even a $1 install sometimes is not doable. And the same thing with like e-commerce. Like if your cost per purchase on like we do a lot of business with mattress companies, funny enough. And that sales cycle is very long because you don't just wake up one day and buy a $1,000 mattress. So if their CPA goal is like $100 on $1,000, it can take a little bit of time to get to that goal. It can just be a little bit more difficult. So it's just about like level setting on goals and like seeing what's possible versus like the actual product itself. You know what I mean? Okay. And then then there's other things that really aren't a fit. Like we've had some where it's like pool accessories or like expensive like outdoor furniture, but like I'm talking expensive like thousands of dollars for a lounge chair. And I'm like, no, these people are buying. The people who are buying this probably aren't watching TV at all because. And then also like it's probably an assistant who's buying this stuff anyway. So you know, there's slight nuances, but I think the main takeaway is like it's about understanding what the goal is and then like coming up with a solid strategy, or not even a solid strategy, like figuring out what tactics we're going to use to like actually hit those goals is what we have to do. But anyway, I don't want to keep you from your internal meeting. And I really appreciate that you stayed late.
Of course, this was nice.